just as similar question to Alice about design and the health of the design industry. It's interesting you talk about sourcing from British product. I mean, it's debated a lot now about trying to rebuild British manufacturing and producers. I mean, what state of health do you see British companies in that way? I mean, obviously Portmeirion and Rawsthorn are 200 plus years old, but what's...
We brought quite a lot of production back to the UK since 2009. We still produce quite a lot abroad. Our own factory is full up, producing finest English earthenware. When it comes to bone china or porcelain, we have that made abroad for us, but it's to our specification and it is our design and our product. So we do as much as we can, and Stoke itself is thriving. Stoke as a town is producing 1 million pieces of pottery a week. We're doing 155,000 a week.
It's
so
kind of
quite busy.
Built into the PR story as well, isn't it? And I think there's been a real resurgence I've noticed in young designer makers going back. Like there's a young girl that we were working with last year in London, in East London, who actually moved to Stoke so she could do all of her production there. And cities like Nottingham, I think, are becoming really important again. You know, I think Mary Portas and her knickers, which is not a home product, but sort of reviving those factories in the UK. That's what the PR teams talk about, and that's what they enjoy. So I think it's a really positive thing.
Alice, do you see that as well? Do you have a sense that British manufacturing, British production is improving and growing again?
Well, I think to go back to the Darwin analogy, it is the survival of the fittest. And what seems to have happened is that obviously the sort of the mushy middle, if you like, of British manufacturing hasn't survived, but any company that really does have a claim on quality, on a point of difference. I mean, one of the really interesting things at looking at the exhibitors at the Spring Fair is there are so many companies with incredible provenance. I mean, you look at a company like Ulster Weavers, where when you look at any of their tea towels, the simplest of products, whether it's one of the very traditional designs. I mean, this is a company that's been weaving Irish linen for over 200 centuries, and you can tell it when you look at the tea towels. There is that authenticity, lovely word that you use, that just sort of screams out at you. And I think that their example in continuing, in sustaining, has inspired other companies to sort of stop manufacturing anew and afresh. There are lots of young designer makers who, perhaps because there wasn't a manufacturing infrastructure for them to draw on, have had to work on their own. And also because I think we do now prize those traditional techniques and processes. I mean, it's wonderful to read about young potters going to Stoke-on-Trent. There's also wonderful precedent for it. After, when the Bauhaus design school, the famous modernist design school in Germany, sort of dissolved as Nazi persecution drove many of the students and teachers from Germany. Many of the students and teachers came to Britain, and several of the ceramicists went to live in Stoke-on-Trent because they believed that they should design near the source of production. So they worked for Minton, I think one woman worked for Spode, and did really wonderful designs for them. So it's nice to think that designer makers now are sort of following that historic precedent.
I mean, and absolutely, and on the back of that, we should still encourage all of, the investment through those manufacturing, because the reality is we're definitely improving. I would love to see it much more so. There are still key elements that we work with. Sheffield, obviously, for silver, Cashmere in Scotland, Hoyk, Johnston's, amazing. But I would still love to see, a lot of the designers still have to go elsewhere for commercial reasons, The P&L has to work for your business. So it's definitely improving, but I would love to see more coming our way.
But a lot of the modern design doesn't need massive production runs. If you're looking for exclusivity, you don't need to go overseas necessarily, because you're looking to try an idea. Right? It's a scale thing, really. So I think that's where the British design and manufacturer can work, really. And if it is mass produced, then it loses a bit of that exclusivity as well. So I think.
Well, and where digital manufacturing technologies like 3D printing are going to have a massive impact, because in principle that means that products of all sorts of different price points, including the very cheap ones that migrated to low-cost production elsewhere, could come back to this country, though of course the designer and manufacturer's role will change fundamentally too.
And things being printed live in store and overnight. We've got a promotion at the moment called Festival of Imagination, and we have 3D printers live in store where you have the potential to print a pair of shoes overnight. And that kind of thing, you know, I don't know, will it survive, will it not? Are the shoes aesthetically pleasing? Maybe, maybe not. But it's definitely the beginnings of something that could really change things. And over Christmas time, we had, you could print a mini-me in store, so you could have yourself printed and made, and then they were still hand painted. So it was kind of like an instant production thing. But I mean, that kind of stuff, yeah, it has the wit, it has the eclecticism, it has that kind of British twist to it. Not a British producer in that instance, but definitely something that has to change the future and the future of production.
And how have customers been responding to that? Are they enthusiastic to try it out or a bit suspicious?
I think there's a little bit timid when you first come over, not entirely, you don't yet look at a wall of 3D printers and every single customer isn't sure that that's something that they can buy or whether it's a spectacle that they're looking at. And the reality is that those are machines that are for sale, they're domestic machines for at home, and you know, actually the reality is what you can print at home maybe is fairly limited, but at the moment customers, it takes a little bit of explaining, yes you can take it home, this is the price point, etc., and this is what it is capable of. But that's a different thing as well, isn't it, where the customers become the designers themselves, they become the designer maker. What does that do to the industry? How will that change things? Are you actually going to start buying patterns of design? So rather than come and buy a table in your store, do I come in and upload the design of that table and print it myself? You know, there's all those kinds of...
They love the fun of it though, don't they? I mean, that's the whole, that customer engagement, regardless of whether taking it home is what brings it to life. Yeah.